With the United States apparently in terminal decline, as the world's sole superpower, the fashionable question to ask is which country will replace the United States? The question we hear in every diplomatic circle around the world is, can China become the next superpower by 2030? It seems China has most of the required elements of power needed for a country to become a superpower. It has an extensive industrial base, a strong state, a nuclear-armed military, a continental-sized territory, a permanent seat in the Security Council and an immense population to support its growth. Indeed, the perception that China has already become the world's second superpower has grown so strong that some in the West has proposed a G2. But G2 never materialized since the ties between both countries hampered severely during the Trump administration. The United States think tank warned its government that China might be able to replace the United States from the global power structure by 2035. Since the past 18 months or so, the world is facing with a growing economic crisis, mainly due to the COVID-19 pandemic which decimated the economies worldwide, and the destructive policies of the Trump administration. But unlike other major economies, both of these factors worked in the favor of China. Early recovery of the Chinese economy from the aftershocks of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Trump administration's self-centric policies, allowed China to lend their helping hand to struggling economies worldwide, and even to some traditional allies of the United States. This helped China increase their global outreach and further established its superpower posture in major global institutions. There is hardly any doubt that China has already become the global powerhouse economically that will surpass the United States as the world's largest economy by 2028. China is also striving very hard to replace the United States as top military power by 2035. But the question is, will China be ever as formidable superpower as the United States has been since last 8 decades? During Cold War, the Soviet Union competed the United States for superpower status, and at one point even matched the US's might in military power and leading alliances. But even at the height of its power, the Soviet Union was never a match for US domination economically and culturally. But unlike the Soviet Union, China is already a global economic power, and the largest exporter by value. China's staggering economic growth in the past 40 years is largely credited to its strong productivity spurred by the 1978 market-oriented reforms. To gain upper hand technologically, China spent $378 billion on research and development in 2020 alone. And these are official figures. The actual figures may be much higher, because the Chinese government always hides its actual spendings to avoid raising eyebrows of its regional rivals. Thanks to its staggering investment on research and development, the Chinese scientists have managed to develop modern high-tech weapon systems such as J-20 the Mighty Dragon, Type 055 class destroyer, Type 003 supercarrier, Xi'an H-20 stealth bomber, Z-10 attack helicopters, HQ-9 air defense system, DF-21 anti-ship missiles, hypersonic missiles and nuclear submarines. China is now planning to challenge the US hegemony in the South China Sea and Pacific Ocean, by building a high-tech navy spearheaded by multiple aircraft carriers by the end of the decade. That is why the RAND Corporation report in 2018 on the Chinese defense capabilities stated that, a war against China in 2025 will be bloody and unwinnable, due to China's increasing anti-access area denial arsenal, its growing carrier capabilities, and the strength of its air force. Similarly, China's soft power influence and its diplomatic outreach is on the rise at global stage. In 2019, China was ranked 27th, while the US was ranked 30th in soft power index. China's Belt and Road Initiative is making the regional economies much more dependent on Chinese investments, which brings more and more countries to China's sphere of influence. In short, China is an emerging global superpower in terms of economy, military, technology, diplomacy and soft power influence, second only to the United States. Experts believe, China will surpass the United States in many fields by 2035 to claim the superpower status, if they maintained their current growth rate. But still China have to overcome a number of economic, political, environmental, regional and demographic challenges, if they want to achieve their ultimate goal of being a global superpower. The Chinese military power is quickly becoming the greatest threat to the US military supremacy throughout the world. The Chinese strategy to offset the US dominance in the Pacific arena, and to gain tactical advantage, depends on its ability to strike early and strike hard in a military confrontation. For that same reason, China focused much of their time and resources on the development of long-range ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as carrier-killer anti-ship missiles to neutralize the carrier strike groups of the United States Navy deep inside their naval bases in Hawaii and Guam. China has already developed an effective anti-access area denial deterrent, as well as early strike capability, thanks to its long-range assets. However, for China to surpass the United States military, they will need much more than that. The United States has superior air force and navy, and even though China is trying hard to catch up militarily, they are still behind the US in many sophisticated technologies. The United States, for example, has 11 aircraft carriers, each of which is considered to be the best in the world. While China only has 2 aircraft carriers, and 2 more currently under construction, which will be combat-ready by 2024. They are planning to field 8 operational aircraft carriers by the end of 2030. So even by end of the decade, the Chinese Navy will still be lagging behind the US Navy in numbers of aircraft carriers, which are the greatest power projection weapons. Another field where China needs great improvement is the numbers of 5th-generation fighter aircrafts. Even though China is only second country to have successfully built 5th-generation fighter aircrafts in considerable numbers, but they are still far away from matching the might of the US Air Force in terms of stealth fighter aircrafts. The United States Air Force and Navy has a total of 830 5th-generation fighter aircrafts. Whereas, China has only built 70 or so J-20 stealth fighters so far. So China is clearly behind the US Air Force in terms of quality and quantity of 5th-generation fighter aircrafts as well. Another challenge that is keeping China from achieving the global superpower status is its geopolitical limitations. Unlike the United States, China is surrounded by strong regional rivals such as India, Japan, South Korea and Taiwan. All of these regional powers are enjoying strong strategic and defense cooperation with the United States. China's rise as an emerging global superpower has already triggered a regional geopolitical realignment aimed at checking Beijing's ambitions and sphere of influence. The US and her allies such as Japan and Australia has strengthened economic, defense, and strategic cooperation with India as they want New Delhi to stand up to Beijing. Other regional players such as Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia and the Philippines also see China as an encroaching power that can threaten their interests, and grab their share of resources in the region. So these geopolitical counterbalancing and the negative perception is making it very hard for China to become hegemon power in the region. However, China is well aware of these challenges, which is why China is investing heavily in manufacturing sector, services and infrastructures of countries across Asia, Africa and Middle East, through its Belt and Road Initiative. China wants to expand its sphere of influence across the region, which is why they developed strong strategic and defense ties with several regional powers. Countries like Russia, Pakistan and North Korea have always been strong defense partners of China, but now Iran has also signed $400 billion worth of agreements with China, which brought both Tehran and Beijing close to each other. But most importantly, the Philippines, Malaysia and Egypt, which used to be traditional US allies, are now leaning towards China due to lucrative Chinese investments and projects. However, China still has a long way to go in order to counterbalance the United States regional alliances. Apart from that, China is facing several other challenges as well, such as the impending demographic crisis, environmental challenge, the declining working age population, the shifting of its economy from export-oriented to innovation-driven one. China is well on its way to overtake the United States in several key areas by 2030, such as world's largest economy, high-tech manufacturing base, artificial intelligence, 5G technology and commercial applications. But the United States will still be well ahead of China in terms of geopolitical influence, military might, education, liberty and space race. So in 2030, China may be considered as a global superpower, but it will not be the only superpower by any means. That's all on the topic for now. Take care and have a great day.